In the annals of ancient warfare, few battles have shaped the destiny of nations as profoundly as the confrontation at the waters of Merom. This is the story of divine intervention, strategic brilliance, and unwavering faith that transformed a wandering people into conquerors of the Promised Land. The sun cast long shadows across the ancient landscape of Canaan as news of Israel's southern victories reached the northern kingdoms. King Jabin of Hazor, ruler of the mightiest city-state in the region, felt the tremor of fear ripple through his royal court. Hazor stood as the crown jewel of Canaanite civilization, its massive walls and towering gates testament to centuries of unchallenged dominance. The city commanded trade routes and controlled vast territories, making Jabin the most powerful monarch in the northern territories. But power breeds paranoia, and Jabin understood that Israel's unstoppable advance threatened everything he held dear. The time had come to forge the greatest military alliance the ancient world had ever witnessed. Swift messengers rode across the northern territories, carrying urgent summons to every king, chieftain, and warlord who valued their independence. The call to arms resonated from the mountains of Lebanon to the shores of the Great Sea. Royal couriers galloped through mountain passes and desert valleys, their horses' hooves thundering against ancient stone pathways. Each message carried the same desperate plea: unite or face destruction at the hands of this mysterious nation guided by an invisible deity. The response exceeded even Jabin's wildest expectations as kings from every corner of the northern territories pledged their armies to the cause. Warriors began streaming toward the designated meeting point, their bronze weapons glinting in the Mediterranean sunlight. One by one, the rulers answered Jabin's desperate plea, understanding that their survival depended on unity against this strange nation guided by an invisible god. Kings arrived with their finest warriors, their bronze-tipped spears gleaming in the sunlight. The coalition grew beyond anyone's wildest imagination, transforming into a military machine that dwarfed any previous Canaanite alliance. Horses thundered across the plains as cavalry units from distant kingdoms converged on the gathering point. Mountain chieftains descended from their highland fortresses, bringing with them fierce warriors accustomed to brutal mountain warfare. Coastal kings contributed their finest naval infantry, men hardened by years of Mediterranean raiding and trading expeditions. Iron-wheeled chariots rolled into position, their metal fittings catching the light as skilled charioteers prepared for what they believed would be their greatest triumph. The very ground trembled under the weight of this unprecedented war machine. Professional soldiers from a dozen different kingdoms mingled in the massive encampment, their diverse languages creating a babel of military preparation. Weaponsmiths worked frantically to sharpen blades and repair armor for the coming confrontation. As the alliance reached its full strength, the assembled force represented the technological and tactical pinnacle of ancient Near Eastern warfare. These were not mere tribal warriors but professional soldiers equipped with the finest weapons their civilization could produce. The Northern Coalition boasted overwhelming superiority in every conventional measure of military strength, with cavalry units that could outmaneuver any infantry formation. Their chariot corps represented the ancient equivalent of modern armored divisions, capable of devastating enemy lines with coordinated charges. Veteran commanders studied detailed battle plans while scouts reported on Israeli troop movements and tactical formations. The alliance possessed every advantage that ancient military science could provide. Supply trains stretched for miles, carrying provisions, weapons, and siege equipment necessary for what promised to be a decisive campaign. The logistics alone represented a triumph of ancient organizational capability. Meanwhile, in the Israelite camp, Joshua received intelligence reports that would have broken the spirit of any ordinary commander. The enemy force outnumbered his people dramatically, possessing technological advantages that seemed insurmountable. Spies returned with accounts of enemy strength that staggered even the most experienced Israeli military leaders. The coalition's size and sophistication challenged every assumption about their own military capabilities. Yet Joshua had learned to listen for a voice that spoke beyond the realm of human strategy and conventional wisdom. The same divine presence that had parted the Jordan River now whispered instructions that defied military logic. Prayer became Joshua's primary weapon as he sought divine guidance for the impossible task ahead. The weight of leadership pressed heavily upon his shoulders, but faith anchored his soul in supernatural confidence. The command came with startling clarity: strike swiftly at the waters of Merom, where the enemy would least expect an attack. Trust not in horses or chariots, but in the power that had already delivered Jericho and Ai into their hands. Divine strategy contradicted human wisdom, calling for aggressive action against overwhelming odds. The plan required absolute trust in supernatural intervention over conventional military thinking. Joshua's battle plan emerged not from military academies but from divine revelation, emphasizing speed, surprise, and absolute dependence on supernatural intervention. The strategy required perfect timing and unwavering faith from every soldier in the Israelite ranks. Officers gathered around their commander as Joshua outlined a plan that seemed to border on madness. The strategy called for direct assault against superior forces positioned in advantageous terrain. Training intensified as Israeli warriors prepared for their greatest challenge, drilling in formations that would maximize their limited advantages. Every soldier understood that victory depended on flawless execution and divine blessing. Weapons were sharpened and armor repaired as the camp buzzed with preparation for the coming battle. Despite the overwhelming odds, morale remained high among troops who had witnessed impossible victories before. As dawn broke over the waters of Merom, the Canaanite alliance completed its final preparations, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Their commanders surveyed the battlefield with satisfaction, believing victory was merely a matter of proper execution. The morning mist clung to the water's surface as horses snorted and chariots creaked into position, creating an atmosphere of tense anticipation. Warriors checked their weapons one final time, eager to crush this upstart nation that dared challenge their authority. Cavalry units positioned themselves for flanking maneuvers while chariot formations prepared for devastating frontal charges. The alliance's tactical deployment represented centuries of accumulated military wisdom. Veteran sergeants moved among the ranks, offering final encouragement and checking equipment one last time. Confidence permeated the coalition forces as they prepared to demonstrate their military superiority. But Joshua's forces moved like shadows through the pre-dawn darkness, positioning themselves for an assault that would catch the enemy completely off guard. The Israelites advanced with supernatural silence, their hearts beating in rhythm with divine purpose. Elite units infiltrated enemy positions while the main force prepared for coordinated attack. The timing had to be perfect, with no margin for error against such overwhelming opposition. Israeli scouts reported enemy positions with military precision, providing crucial intelligence for the coming assault. Every detail mattered when facing such massive disadvantages in numbers and equipment. The final prayers were whispered as warriors gripped their weapons and prepared to trust their lives to divine intervention. Faith became their primary armor as they prepared to charge into impossible odds. The attack erupted with the fury of a thunderstorm, as Israelite warriors poured down from the hills like an unstoppable flood. Their battle cries echoed across the valley as they struck the enemy formation at its most vulnerable points. Surprise achieved its intended effect as coalition forces struggled to respond to the unexpected assault. Carefully planned formations crumbled under the shock of sudden, coordinated attack. Confusion swept through the Canaanite ranks as their carefully planned battle formations crumbled under the unexpected assault. Horses reared in terror while charioteers struggled to maintain control of their vehicles in the chaos. The technological advantages that had seemed so decisive moments before became liabilities as chariots overturned and cavalry units fled in disorder. What had begun as a confident advance transformed into a desperate retreat as panic spread through the alliance. Communication broke down as officers struggled to maintain command and control in the chaos. The coalition's size became a disadvantage as confusion spread through the massive formation. Joshua's forces pressed their advantage relentlessly, pursuing the fleeing enemy with divine strength flowing through their limbs. The waters of Merom turned red with the blood of those who had dared to oppose the God of Israel. Israeli warriors fought with supernatural energy, their endurance sustained by divine power. Each sword stroke carried the weight of divine judgment against nations that had rejected their creator. The great King Jabin, who had orchestrated this massive alliance, found himself fleeing for his life as his dreams of victory crumbled into dust. His mighty army scattered like leaves before a hurricane, their unity shattered by the power of Israel's God. Coalition commanders abandoned their posts as organized resistance collapsed completely. The greatest military alliance in Canaanite history dissolved into chaos within hours of the initial assault. Victory at Merom opened the floodgates for Joshua's northern campaign, as one fortified city after another fell to the advancing Israelites. The psychological impact of defeating such a massive coalition sent shockwaves throughout the remaining Canaanite territories. News of the impossible victory spread rapidly throughout the ancient Near East, establishing Israel's reputation as an unstoppable force. Kings who had never heard of this nation now trembled at reports of their supernatural military prowess. Hazor, the greatest prize of all, awaited its fate as Joshua's forces approached its legendary walls with divine mandate burning in their hearts. The city that had dominated the region for centuries now trembled before the advancing army of former slaves. The siege preparations began immediately as Israeli engineers studied the massive fortifications that had protected Hazor for generations. Divine strategy would again prove superior to human defensive planning. The siege of Hazor became a masterpiece of military execution, as Joshua applied the lessons learned from previous conquests to overcome the city's defenses. Every stone that fell carried symbolic weight, representing the collapse of Canaanite power in the north. Battering rams crashed against ancient gates while siege towers rose against walls that had seemed impregnable. The defenders fought desperately, but their fate had already been sealed by divine decree. When Hazor's walls finally crumbled, the destruction was total and systematic, fulfilling the divine command for complete obliteration. The once proud city became a heap of ruins, its glory extinguished forever by the righteous judgment of heaven. Flames consumed palaces and temples as the city that had ruled the north for centuries disappeared beneath divine judgment. The destruction served as a warning to all who would oppose the purposes of the Almighty. The concept of harem, or complete destruction, carried profound theological significance beyond mere military conquest. This was not random violence but sacred justice, executed according to divine decree against nations that had rejected their creator. Archaeological evidence continues to confirm the thoroughness of Hazor's destruction, with massive burn layers testifying to the biblical account. The ancient stones themselves bear witness to this pivotal moment in history. The burning of Hazor sent smoke signals visible for miles, proclaiming to all who witnessed it that the God of Israel was supreme over all earthly powers. No alliance, however mighty, could stand against the purposes of the Almighty when His chosen people walked in obedience. Refugees fleeing the destruction carried news of Israel's victory to distant lands, spreading fear and wonder throughout the ancient world. The God of a former slave nation had proven superior to all the deities of established civilizations. Through these northern victories, Joshua emerged as one of history's greatest military leaders. His reputation built not on personal brilliance but on faithful obedience to divine instruction. His success demonstrated that true leadership flows from submission to higher authority. Military historians continue to study Joshua's campaigns, marveling at tactical brilliance that transcended conventional strategic thinking. His victories redefined the art of warfare for generations to come. The tactical principles displayed at Merom transcended their historical context, offering timeless lessons about courage, faith, and the power of united purpose. Joshua's example showed that the greatest victories come to those who trust in something greater than themselves. Modern military academies still examine these ancient battles, finding principles that remain relevant in contemporary strategic thinking. The fusion of divine guidance with tactical excellence created a model of leadership that endures across millennia. The geopolitical transformation following these conquests reshaped the entire ancient Near East, as Israel's dominance established new power dynamics that would influence the region for centuries. The Northern Campaign proved that divine backing could overcome any human opposition. Trade routes shifted as new political realities emerged from the ashes of the old Canaanite order. Israel's territorial expansion created economic opportunities that would benefit the region for generations. Archaeological discoveries at Hazor and other sites continue to provide fascinating glimpses into this pivotal period, with evidence of massive destruction layers that align with the biblical timeline. These findings remind us that the stories we read were lived experiences of real people in real places. Carbon dating and stratigraphy confirm the historical accuracy of these ancient accounts, bridging the gap between faith and evidence. The ground itself testifies to the reality of these extraordinary events. The theological implications of the Northern Campaign extend far beyond military history, illustrating fundamental truths about divine faithfulness to covenant promises. The God who spoke to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had kept his word despite seemingly impossible circumstances. Covenant theology finds its practical expression in these military victories, demonstrating that divine promises backed by divine power will ultimately prevail. The Northern Campaign became a testament to supernatural faithfulness across generations. For modern readers, the battle at Merom offers profound insights into the nature of faith under pressure and the importance of trusting divine wisdom over human calculations. These ancient warriors faced their giants and emerged victorious through supernatural strength. Contemporary believers draw inspiration from Joshua's example, finding courage to face their own overwhelming challenges. The principles of faith, obedience, and divine dependence remain as relevant today as they were 3 millennia ago. The legacy of Joshua's Northern Campaign continues to inspire those who face overwhelming odds, reminding us that apparent disadvantages can become divine opportunities. When heaven fights alongside earth, no enemy force can ultimately prevail against the purposes of the Almighty. History remembers the waters of Merom as the place where human impossibility met divine possibility and found itself utterly transformed. The echoes of that ancient victory still resonate through the ages, calling ordinary people to extraordinary faith. If this epic retelling of Israel's legendary victory has stirred your heart and expanded your understanding of ancient warfare and divine intervention, please consider subscribing to our channel for more incredible biblical narratives. Like this video if it brought these ancient heroes to life for you, and share it with friends who appreciate the timeless lessons found in these sacred battles.